Welcome all, boys, girls, bunch of weird people, likely weeaboos and neckbeards and stuff. Anyways, welcome to my beautiful spacing tutorial. Yeah. Okay, so in my opinion, spacing is one of the most important elements to animation in general because, it embodies, it's a part of, easing and just generally you can have, a bunch of issues with wobbliness and stuff, and sometimes I feel like if I'm giving criticism to someone, they might not necessarily understand what I mean when I'm mentioning spacing. And it's something that isn't entirely covered, I believe, in the 12 principles of animation. I'm not entirely sure about that, but yeah, that's just a large thing about it. So with spacing, generally with spacing is saying it's talking about the amount of area that a frame or the object in a frame is going to be moving between each and every one, which can create easing and such, but generally it'll make it a lot easier to follow and have better flow. For example, this is an example I made really quick of what I would consider to be pretty good spacing. If you were to imagine this circle as just a basic object, it doesn't really matter too much because it applies for almost anything. And I'm talking in a two-dimensional plane. Basically, this would be, imagine if each of these were its own frame, alright? So then when it starts out, it's saying about the easing, it's each of the objects are going to be closer together, and then as they go on, you would say if they're to gain speed, you could see the space between each one would grow wider and then would get smaller again, right? Which, here's kind of a visual example. With bad spacing, which I guess is a bit over-exaggerated a bit over here, but, yeah, okay, so with what I would consider to be pretty bad spacing is just, what it can be, you can't necessarily see this because it's not in motion at this very second, but the object itself is not following much of a path, and it's just kind of, well, frankly, all over the place, Because, it's trying to go to point A to point B, but as you can see, the spacing, which it's the name, is rather inconsistent in parts. For example, it starts, outside of the fact that it's not even following a path, the spacing between here and here is smaller, which just starts out good, then it goes out here, and it slows down, but then, whoa, it's over here now. Okay, this makes perfect sense. But yeah, it can cause, like I said, it can make it just generally very unappealing. Now, here's the examples I did. Now, pay attention to the timeline for some of it. Let me just enable it. Oh, never mind. Okay, so for example, so if you were to get all these frames, right, and then put them out as its own, you would, of course, it looks like the example, you'd get something like this, right? Which you wouldn't realize how good that actually looks when it's in motion. Then it actually is rather satisfying in my opinion. As you can see, I'm not freaking lying. This is pretty much what that looks like, right? So if you were to, now for my example of bad spacing, let me just say this, I'm sorry. Alright, so now where am I? Okay, so I have two examples, but okay, so this one's a bit more akin to the last one. Looks like there's an earthquake. Because outside of that, it's just, if you were to do this, look at this, man. You're starting out slow, you got the easing, but then suddenly you just skip ahead because who cares? Just, why not? We don't care about the pacing, Anyways, it's just kind of go its own way, I guess. And yeah, it's almost like just the frames themselves just got scrambled about, but which I know this might seem just silly and over exaggerated, but this can actually happen when you're with more complicated things. You don't notice it. It's just when you're trying to follow the path. It's just, it starts out slowly, and then they're just kind of going wherever the hell they want, I guess. Anyways, so next we'd also, here's another example. It's a bit more organized. Not really, but this one, it kind of resembles more like they're actually trying, I think. Probably not, but yeah. They have the start of it correct. It's just generally the pacing in between would be uneven if I were to just do this. Look, it slows down in the middle, outside the fact that it's just twitching everywhere, which I am gotten to a point where, you try doing it right so much, it's just difficult to even do it wrong. Anyways, so a good way to think of it, thinking about like everything having like an arc of motion. Like if you're thinking about having something, these aren't animated, but if you were to think about it like this, if you were to have something go in like a general motion, like as an arrow, it would go, you could have it go upwards, and it would follow like this, still applying what we did earlier. No matter what it is, you can it'll still look decent, and it doesn't always have to be a straight path, you know? And also, now let me explain this one thing a little bit more detailed to ignore the God mouth is God, even though he is. Anyways, now, this is less important if you're doing just basic objects and like stick figures or whatever. Personally, I'd suggest it just being, if you're going to do that, just, you know, do it single framed, because it's kind of obnoxious. Because I feel like sometimes people will double frame things in order to make it seem, because they see like good animators and stuff. It's like, dude, look at them, they're doing that double framing stuff. That obviously, if I add random double frames at random points, will make it good, right? Right? Okay. The thing is, a lot of people don't realize is there's like there's an art. Okay, maybe not quite an art. Why is having seizure? Okay, but there's a lot more to it if you really go into it. So let me explain. So for example, this is right here. This motion is not double frame. This is just a normal motion of it just doing its thing, right? And you know, it's all single framed, right? Now let me explain. So now we also have this motion. This is double framed. The motion itself, this, in my opinion, I think the spacing this is okay. They are about equivalent. I mean, they start and stop at the same place, and they're going at the same pace. It's just one of them uses less frames, so some of them will just literally just wouldn't be there, right? So I mean, this is it would seem more choppy, but in motion it's actually decent, and it's still, the main thing is while it would look slightly more choppy, it's pretty easy to follow. You can still tell where it's going. And if you were to, for example, tween this, which I know you can't do in traditional animation still, I mean, it would be relatively similar, you know? Okay, maybe not this part, I goofed up here, but still. Yeah, so it's not just random, you know, it's not just randomly pressing F5 of just points, because that doesn't make it good, you know, it still needs to follow the direction it was doing previously. Now, I did this really quick, little stick figure dude, to show you what I'm referring to. So, in my opinion, I think this has decent spacing. This guy starts running, and he slows down and stops, even though it's kind of a strange position. We don't question it. Anyways, if I were to break this down, if we were to follow the torso, for example, you know, it starts off slower, and it picks up, slows down slightly for each step as it needs to, like, move its body across the legs, and then when it stops, it goes slower again, which I think looks decent, you know, it's appealing to the eye, not necessarily realistic. So what I did is I tried diagramming it. If you follow the dots, it's about where the head is, not quite the head, the general body of them, because you can see the dots where they start a little bit, and then it goes faster until eventually it goes to stop. Now, the thing is, what I have pointed out is the leg crosses, if you follow the dots of the spacing itself, they get closer together as they slow down, and then they get farther out again, and then get closer and farther out. As you can see, it's not completely consistent, like with moments up here, which is sometimes why it's nice to draw it out. But you could probably get the idea of why this is more decent. It's a bit more formed out. If you were just to have like random parts, like for example, I just delete random stuff, right? It would look weird, okay? It wouldn't make sense if I were to like literally just, I don't know why I'm doing this, but if I were to draw it out, you would notice how freaking weird this is, right? Look. You see what I mean? I mean, like, yeah, it's still going in the same direction, but Jesus Christ, it just kind of, you'd fix something like this but adding a frame in between each of these, right? And it would look, okay, maybe this is beyond repair, but still, it would look better, right? So if you think it like that, it's just generally, yeah, I mean, and if your animation looked like that in the first place, that's how you could fix it. You could, if you were just to look at all of the frames like this, right? You could figure out, okay, let's see, what do I need to fix? So if your thing just looks weird, I mean, you can figure out, okay, I need a frame right here, like of them going, eh. and then one going, and then one going, you know, and such. Yeah, you know what you need to fix instead of just going, like, I don't see what's wrong. It looks perfect. Okay, it's good. It's not teleporting. Get out. Anyways, yeah, this is a little bit short, but I was trying to keep it to the point. Learn stuff. Google is useful. Don't always whine to me. Please, God, don't whine to me. I don't have time to after the time. Anyways, yeah, and look at, and just generally with this sort of knowledge you hopefully gained, look at other people's animations, preferably frame by frame, and then see, like, man, this stuff's pretty good. And a good example of that would be a animator called Godmouth from some years ago. He has amazing spacing, in the sense that, like what I did with the double framing, at least, wherever that was, I don't remember. Okay, yeah. He, like, almost triple frames. Like, he'll have, if you can see the timeline, he'll have, like, bits that are, like, literally, like, super long. But it doesn't look good here, but, in his, he keeps track of the motion so well, it stays consistent, which can be a challenge, and will generally look like it's a single frame thing because it's so easy to follow. So if you ever want to, I'll probably paste that in the description, so check out his stuff at some point if you want to study that. And yeah, pretty much this is more important to people if you're doing full body things than, you know, smaller things, of course. But yeah, see you kids sometime, I don't know.